الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد. The question why is one which we're not allowed to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لا يسأل عما يفعل وهم يسألون. Allah is not, cannot be, will not be questioned about what He does. وهم يسألون. And the creation will be questioned. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does what He wants. فَعَّالٌ لِمَا يُرِيدُ. However, one of Allah's attributes is that He is Al-Hakim. He is all-wise. And we see this in the physical manifestation of Allah's sifat in His creation. If we study it, وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانَ أَلَّا تَطْغَوْا فِي الْمِيزَانِ. Allah has established a balance which we mustn't interfere with, not just in our dealings, but in everything. If the amount of salt in the oceans was to increase or decrease, it would have colossal and unimaginable consequences. The buoyancy of the seawater and the life in the sea, and indeed the parts of the oceans which freeze, you see the icebergs, and the parts which do not. This is all based on this fine balance. مَرَجَ الْبَحْرَيْنِ يَلْتَقِيَانِ بَيْنَهُمَا بَرْزَخٌ لَا يَبْغِيَانِ. Allah has sent forth the two bodies of water, sweet and salt. There's a barrier between them, they don't merge, we don't see that barrier. The life forms in both are separate. Even the color of the water is separate. My grandfather, rahimahullah, used to mention that there was a well that he knew of, a well that had sweet water on one side and salt water on the other, and there was nothing to separate the two types of water, depending on which side of the well you took the water out from. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. So when you find everything, the moisture in the air, the wind and its speed, even the number of births and deaths in humans and animals alike, if we interfere, we have problems. You can't mess around with demographics. If you do, you have generations of families which have no cousins and no siblings and no uncles and no aunties. And then you have to automize old people's care as well. There's nobody to run the system, run the nation, do the farming and run the institutions. It's a problem in more than one part of the world. There's a natural balance. So you can observe Allah's hikmah if our hearts and their beating, if its speed goes up or down, if the salt level, not in the oceans alone, but in our bloodstream goes up or down. It needs to be supplemented, our glucose and sugar levels. There's a fine balance. أَلَّا تَطْغَوْا فِي الْمِيزَانِ. So Allah is Al-Hakim and Allah is all-wise. And it follows that Allah's commands will contain wisdom in them as well. حُكْمُ الْحَكِيمِ لَا يَخْلُو عَنِ الْحِكْمَةِ. If the command is coming from the wise one, then the command will be full of wisdom as well. So, no, it is not our prerogative. We don't have the right to ask Allah the question, why? That's not our right. When Ibrahim alayhi salam asked Allah, he asked Allah how, not why. Rabbi arini kayfa tuhil mawta. Not whether it would happen or not, but how it would manifest. And Allah showed him how he might slaughter these birds and separate their parts and then call to them after having tamed them in their life, and they would come running to him and such would be the resurrection on the day of Qiyamah, our dust particles will come together. So this was a question to gain greater. He says, Allah asks Ibrahim to express his answer to us in his wisdom, not because Allah didn't know. أَوَلَمْ تُؤْمِن, don't you have iman? قَالَ بَلَا, of course, indeed I have iman, O Allah. وَلَكِنْ لِيَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي, I ask for further itminan in my heart. The ulama say that itminan is not a condition for iman. You don't have to be satisfied. You can be bewildered because there's an ocean there that you can't traverse and you can't get into the depths of. But there should be no doubt. It's a separate thing. There should be peace. There should be no doubt. But there would be bewilderment because we can't understand everything. We're not Allah, we're not divine ourselves, that we may comprehend everything. And we never will and we never can. So, we don't ask the question why. Ibrahim didn't ask the question why when Allah instructed him in his true dream to slaughter and sacrifice his son Ibrahim. Ismail didn't ask the question why. فَلَمَّا أَسْلَمَا, they both submitted. Although we are not being given the command of Ibrahim and Ismail. Ismail to offer himself and Ibrahim to accept this command from Allah and to present Ismail to Allah in this way. That's not what we are being obliged to do. Yet, the spirit is the same. We have to embrace Allah's commands, one way or the other. In Surah Al-Hashr today, there was a mention of مَا أَفَاءَ اللَّهُ عَلَى رَسُولِهِ, a particular category of wealth, fay, which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would distribute. But then there's this universal principle mentioned here for the ummah. Not just relating to this mal, relating to everything. مَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُ. Whatsoever the messenger gives to you, then take it. خُذُوهُ, hold it, grasp it. وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ, and whatever he prohibits you from, فَانْتَهُ, then hold back, then stop, then desist. This is the principle. Now, the reasons and the hikam behind the commands of Allah and His Rasul, the ilal, are sometimes mentioned in the Quran. Allah Ta'ala mentions that لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, do this amal and you become muttaqi. This is mentioned in relation to various teachings and commands of Allah. Fasting is one of them. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us, فَإِنَّهُ لَهُ وِجَاء. Fasting is like castration, without castration. Meaning, you will be able to control the sexual desires that consume your every thought in the passions of youth. You will be able to control that. You'll be able to put your foot on it if you fast. So the hikam and the wisdom in salah, sawm, hajj, zakah, in many aspects of deen are mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah. And that's a favor from Allah, that He gives us some insight from time to time. This gives us further itminan. But it's not a condition or a prerequisite. And I mention this because today, one of our problems is that if we understand a teaching of deen, then we accept it. And if we don't, we question it. Oh, why? Why? That doesn't make sense to me. One brother just sent a question in the other day. He says, he's asking about interest-based loans. And he says, well, Islam is made easy, isn't it? Ad-dinu yusrun. I was thinking, if you only had read just the translation of the verses on interest, La tadlimuna wa la tudlamun. Is it easy to oppress others and be oppressed yourself? To give that interest payment? Is it easy? Is it hard to do that? To be a zalim or a madloom? Which is easier, or not to be? So, subhanAllah, we want to apply it to the categorical haram things as well. That Islam is easy. Islam is easy, and in order to, people are preventing you from that ease, the pressure around you, and your own nafs from time to time, and our lack of knowledge, is preventing us from doing the easy thing. Islam is easy, okay. So you blow £100,000 on your wedding, and you delay it for 10 years. Because Islam is easy and it lets you do what you want, right? That's not what Islam is. Islam is about submitting, letting Allah choose for you, أَن يَكُونَ لَهُمُ الْخِيَرَةُ. When Allah and His Rasul decide, we don't have a choice. And we shouldn't want a choice. If we are true to Allah and His Rasul, we shouldn't care for a choice. This is Islam and Istislam and Taslim and Tanqeed and Inqiyad. We should want Allah to decide for us. What is istikhara? Istikhara, by the way, is not a demand for revelation, that we should see all these wonderful colors in our dreams and, people phone in and say, I did istikhara and it came positive. What is positive and negative istikhara, my friends? There's no such thing. There are many of the Salaf Salihin and the Awliya who said that they never had, forget a dream, they never even had a vibe, Sharh al-Sadr. They never even had a vibe. Istikhara is talabul khair, to ask Allah for good. And we do that amal, and then we use mashwara and common sense. And if it's meant to happen, it will happen. But you don't expect revelation. Who am I to demand the king and the president and the prime minister to write a personal letter to me? Who am I to demand of Allah that He sends revelation to me in the form of a dream? Jibreel is not going to come down for me to tell me, yeah man, go ahead, this is good for you. Subhanallah, even Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when there was a fatra in wahi for long periods of time, he would be aggrieved. مَا نَتَنَزَّلُ إِلَّا بِأَمْرِ رَبِّكَ. And مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى. Reassurance is sent down from Allah that look, Allah is not displeased with you because there's a gap. Jibreel alayhi salam is saying, and Allah is quoting in the Quran, مَا نَتَنَزَّلُ إِلَّا. We don't come down except with Allah's instruction. So Jibreel doesn't come down to Rasulullah even though Rasulullah is missing Jibreel. And we expect the angel to inspire a dream into our sleep. My friends, we need to, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was given a choice by Allah. Do you want to be a Rasul who is a Malik or a Rasul who is an Abd? Do you want to be a king and a messenger, or a messenger who is a servant of Allah? And Jibreel, when he came with this instruction and question from Allah, he pointed downwards to indicate, because he was Rasulullah's friend and companion. He was giving mashwara. Ask for the one which has more modesty and humbleness in it. Yes, Rasulullah was given a kingdom. He was given a kingdom. Not only Hijaz, the whole of Yemen, an entire country, Allah preserve it today and return it to its previous glory. Embraced Islam just by itself, just by the invitation. In this whole region, all the way. So Arabia entered into Islam, but the point is that Rasulullah didn't live like a king. He chose not to. We are ummatis of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But coming back to my point, we ought to accept Rasulullah's choice for us. And we ought to reject Rasulullah's prohibitions which he has told us to avoid. And that ought to be good enough for us. And another point here, I mentioned this earlier in Ramadan. I'm very concerned about this, so I'm going to mention it again. And it's the fact that our deen and our iman is passed down heart to heart, from person to person. لولا الإسناد لقال من شاء ما شاء. If there was no sanad, no chain, anybody would say anything. So this is not something that you can get from artificial intelligence. People get all excited. They want to take fatwas from a computer. That's not the way it works. Subhanallah, we get caught up. I mean, half of Ramadan has been spent by some people only talking about the crescent. My friends, be the full moon yourself by using Ramadan properly. Leave that subject to those who are concerned with it. The ulama are not going to do khiyana. Whichever way you go, inshallah, your fasting and your Eid will be valid. It's an ijtihadi mas'ala. It's a mas'ala not of haqq and batil, not of iman and apostasy and heresy. It's a mas'ala in which there is some leeway. And there are ulama, respectable ulama on both sides of this discussion. We ought to understand our own sort of parameters. These online warriors who have nothing better to do. I'm not talking about the ulama here who genuinely want to convey a particular message, fine. But leave that to those who it's appropriate for. You don't have the confidence to repair your own household boiler. but you want to open up and tear apart, the ummah's issues in such a way that's detrimental. This is not our only issue today. So coming back to my point, Iman and Deen is something which doesn't come from computers, not even from books alone. If it did come from books alone, Allah sent the Tawrat on tablets, which you could hold in your hand. But He sent Musa alayhi salam as a teacher. And then He sent so many Anbiya in Banu Israel to teach the same teachings. Even Isa alayhi salam, he didn't come, he was given the Injil, but it didn't cancel the teachings of the Tawrat. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was given the Quran. But the Quran was revealed over 23 years so that it could be taught gradually. وَقُرْآنًا فَرَقْنَاهُ لِتَقْرَأَهُ عَلَى مَكْثٍ وَنَزَّلْنَاهُ تَنزِيلًا. It was a gradual process, layer by layer, stage by stage. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught the Quran and explained it. The Sahaba then further explained and conveyed it in practice and in the word and the spirit of it. Was conveyed by the Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala, the direct students of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then by the Tabi'in, then by the Tabu'ut Tabi'in. And so let us distinguish the real thing from the fake thing. Which one would you rather have? A bunch of real flowers which have real color and fragrance, or a bunch of paper flowers, plastic ones? Is there a difference? For some people there might be no difference. There is a difference. Which do you prefer? Even those articles, the artisan handmade, mashallah, cake that your mum or aunt makes for you, your sibling, your sister, whatever it may be, your daughter, which one do you prefer? Or the one that's coming out of a machine on a conveyor belt? Which one is better for you? The artisan cake, the handmade, the genuine, where that personal touch is there. Do you want to have your operation done by a machine? They are done by a machine sometimes, but there's a person behind them. Or do you want it, you want the personal touch of a therapist who can talk to you, who can understand your emotions? Subhanallah, is our society in a situation where you have to make friends with digital pets? You walk your digital dog down the street. Woof, woof. Someone was playing with a dinosaur this afternoon in the masjid. The dad was reading salah and the child's playing with a baby dinosaur, with a plastic dinosaur. So what sound is that? I was told it was a dinosaur. Subhanallah. So basically, and even further, this lack of connection is leading to people wanting digital friendships. Yes, there's the whole meta world and what have you, and what people don't do there and what they try to do there. La ilaha illallah. But we were talking about artificial intelligence with reference to deen. If you have the real thing, then you can taste it as well. You can smell it as well. You can wear it. Its fragrance will be on your person. Your face will actually beam. It won't beam by taking fatwas from the internet, my friends. This is not the spirit. But to come back to the central point, it is not our prerogative to question the wisdom and the teachings of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu dkhulu fis silmi kaffa wa la tattabi'u khutuwatish shaitan. O believers, enter into Islam fully and don't walk in the footsteps of shaitan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us tawfiq. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallama ala abdihi wa rasulihi sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina rahmatika.